Hey gang, 88 years ago, a radio program called the Rustic Chatterwits graced the airwaves of the West Coast, and as far as I've been able to ascertain, it has never been heard again. We're going to remedy that today on the 78 RPM channel. Hello, and welcome to the 78 RPM channel. Whether you're new to 78s or an advanced collector, this is your source for information, research, and music about 78 RPM records, cylinders, and radio transcriptions. If you stick around the 78 RPM channel long enough, you'll realize that we deal with everything in the 78 RPM era. That can mean cylinders from the 1890s. It could mean radio transcriptions all the way up until about 1960. Today we're going to talk about a radio transcription, but this one in particular is from 1934. This is a Titan radio transcription, and it contains some rapid-fire conversational humor that is surprisingly sharp and funny.
Makes up as they go along. Besides, she should have been married long ago, always avowing that she could marry anyone she pleased.
Then why is she still single?
Well, I guess she never pleased anybody.
Have you talked to Jed about Maud?
You gall dang tootin' I have.
Oh, then it's all fixed up.
Not in your tin type. I'm in the worst pickle than I was afore.
So at this point, some background material on radio transcriptions and specifically on the Titan Company is probably in order. In the early days of radio, a lot of content was performed live. Radio stations had studios on site, and they literally just had microphones running into the next room. They would perform in the next room, the guy in there on the soundboard would turn it up, and people would be able to hear what they wanted to hear. Then somebody came up with the idea of, hey, if we recorded these and had them pressed onto discs, we wouldn't have to constantly have people on site, and we wouldn't have to have live performances all the time. And so radio transcriptions were born. It allowed you to record a program, distribute it to one or perhaps dozens of radio stations, and each one of them could air that program when they felt like running it. One thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with these radio transcriptions is that the farther back you go, the more scarce they get. Obviously, the big 16-inch radio transcriptions that a lot of us are familiar with, the Armed Forces Radio Service and stuff like that, those are really neat. There's some great stuff on there. But as far as radio collectors go, that's not particularly rare stuff. Once you get back into the 30s, they start to get tougher to find. If you get into the 20s, you're dealing with stuff that you just assume any copy is the only one that exists. But today we're talking about the 1930s. The company that produced these records was Titan, and they were a studio out of San Francisco. Now, pretty much anything from the Titan label is going to be relatively scarce. I don't think I am aware of any Titan discs or radio transcription discs that exist in more than, say, 5, maybe 10 copies at the most. So you're dealing with fairly scarce radio stuff. That was the bird. The Titan Company itself was an offshoot of the Jesse J. Warner Company, who is probably most well known for coming up with flexo discs. Now, flexo discs are very desirable among collectors. They have some good radio material on them, and they release some stuff that was specific to the West Coast. And so if you ever find flexo discs, they are desirable. One of the downsides of flexos is that it was made out of a proprietary material that tended to waffle or scallop around the edges, making a lot of the discs, especially the outside half, unplayable. Titan discs, although possibly made from the same material, don't have this problem because they were about 5 times thicker. In fact, they're even thicker than usual shellac 78s at the time, but they are not made from shellac. They're made out of a material that feels and sounds kind of like a vulcanized rubber. If you can imagine taking a hockey puck and squishing it so that it was 12 inches around and about 3/8 of an inch thick, that's what the Titan records feel like. The positive of that is that it does not scallop around the edges, meaning you don't have the same problem with edge warping like you do with flexo discs. The negative is that it dish warps, and so the center will be lower than the outside edges. The other problem is, and this may be due to the fact that the material itself, although similar, is not an identical formulation to the flexo discs, it exudes a white crystalline substance that is an absolute bear to get off of the records. While a vast majority of the Titan discs were apparently made out of this rubbery substance, Alan Sutton, in his book American Record Companies and Producers 1888 to 1950, I believe is the title of that, anecdotal reports that Warner provided standard shellac pressings to certain clients on occasion has not been confirmed. Well, it can be confirmed. The Titan discs we're talking about today are in fact on shellac. So what do we know about the Rustic Chatterwits? Not much. Because we know it was made in 1934, we should be able to jump online and look at the West Coast schedule for a lot of radio stations, find the Rustic Chatterwits. We will know where it aired, what time it aired. Nothing. I have found absolutely nothing about this radio show. If you go on to the magic Google internet and you type in Rustic Chatterwits with quotes, you will receive 0 returns. In addition, there are 0 reports of Rustic Chatterwits programs at the University of Missouri at Kansas City's Radio Goldindex, which is kind of the clearinghouse for information about radio shows that existed, when they aired, and who was on them. I think the best thing I can do is to let some people with bigger brains than mine, that would be yours, take a listen to the Rustic Chatterwits. If you have any information about who these people are, the performers, even the radio stations upon which they aired, let me know in the comments down below and maybe we can solve a little bit of a mystery.
Well, I might have known it was a smart Alex salesman. But you look right first, though, a sashaying around with a Tony bow tie.
Oh, so you like my bow tie,
I
do
didn't
you?
say it's a did or it's a didn't.
Now, Abby, bow ties are artistic. Why, they show a man's natural bent, as it were.
A man's natural bent. Well, not that you call them artistic, but the same thing is true of bow legs.
Why, Abby, I thought you liked men that wore bright colors. Now, just the other day, I saw Jed Larkin in a very loud suit.
Jed Larkin in a loud suit. Well, I find it danged easy to turn a deaf ear to his suit.
What's the matter with Jed?
Nothing, but I guess all fired disgusted with him a-sparking around with that jellyfish of a Maud Watkins.
Oh, I don't think there's anything to that.
Now, don't you go a-siding in with Jed and that Maud, she with her impromptu complexion.
What do you mean, impromptu complexion?
You know, the kind that makes up as they go along. Besides, she should have been married long ago, always avowing that she could marry anyone she pleased.
Then why is she still single?
Well, I guess she never pleased anybody.
Have you talked to Jed about Maud?
You gall dang tootin' I have.
Oh, then it's all fixed up.
Not in your tin type. I'm in a worse pickle than I was afore.
Well, how come?
Well, you see, I was all set to sue the poor sap for a breach of promise, and now the darn fool wants to marry me.
What'd you tell him?
I told him he'd have to see my pappy first.
Well, did he?
He said as how he'd seen my pappy many times, and he loved me just the same.
Well, Abby, perhaps you should marry him. You know, marriage is a great institution.
Maybe so, but who has a hankering to live in an institution?
Well, I should think you'd want to marry a nice, thrifty young man like Jed.
Oh, I guess it's all right to marry a thrifty man, but it don't appear to me as I'd like to be engaged to one.
Why, you're not the kind of a girl to marry any idiot just because he has money.
Now, Mr. Carlson, you aren't proposing to me, are you?
Oh, Abby, I haven't any money now, even though I was raised in the lap of luxury.
Lap of luxury. What's the matter? Did she stand up?
You know, I'm pretty worried about my finances.
Worried? You should be thankful.
Thankful? What have I got to be thankful for? I can't even pay my bills.
Then you should be thankful you ain't one of your creditors, you darn fool.
Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed listening to the Rustic Chatterwits. You might have been the first person other than me to listen to this show in the last 88 years. That's not so bad. If you have any information whatsoever about the Rustic Chatterwits, please let me know, because I haven't been able to dig up anything, and other scholars I've talked to haven't been able to dig up anything either. But somebody out there has some information for us. Please leave it in the comments down below. Something else to keep in mind as we progress, I'm starting to acquire a bunch of questions that have been submitted in the comments and just online through messaging. We have a program coming up that is just a listener questions video. And so if you have any questions for me that you would like answered, just drop them in the comments down below. We'll get to them. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for taking a listen to this and helping me figure out who in the world the Rustic Chatterwits are. We'll see you next time.